Okay, so thank you all for joining this morning. This is the MLA Learning Lab, so we're just all getting together to share ideas and promote this idea of a learner-centered culture within the classroom, which many of you do extremely effectively. That's why you are at the forefront of what we're trying to do as a district. So I'm just going to go through just sort of an agenda of what these meetings will sort of look like, and they'll morph and change as we get feedback. And if you were part of the math morning chat for K1 and 2, you'll see that the next format for our next meeting changes because, again, we took the feedback from you guys who were involved, and we want to keep evolving this into what suits our needs the best and what uses our time most effectively. So we're just going to go through our meeting this morning. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those as we get there. All right. So our CPO for this morning is that everyone here is a teacher leader. That's why you either volunteered or maybe voluntold because you're awesome. Joining the MLAs, the Modern Learning Architects, and becoming, again, one of the teacher leaders who's going to drive this movement from K to 12. And we're just really excited to see what growth we see in not just our students, but as our teaching and staff as well. So the context here is that we are getting together to facilitate the growth of not just ourselves and not just our students, but also our peers and our colleagues. And that's why we're really tasking you and getting you involved in this professional development side that will hopefully be tailored specifically to Eastern York, not just general, not just a broad, hey, this is some other person who I've never met before. No, these are real people that we work with each and every day. It might be somebody across the hall. And that's something that we can relate to and contextualize within our own classrooms. The purpose is to share our ideas, our best practices, so that we can prepare a professional development opportunity for others who aren't MLAs to sort of get on our level, right? That's a lot of energy this morning. I'm sorry. So the outcome of our meeting this morning is the goal is to understand what the expectations and responsibilities are for ourselves, but also for keeping each other accountable as we go throughout this process, and then we can lean on each other as we need to. So that is the CPO for today. You can just reflect upon that. We will get to a breakout session here in just a minute where you can talk and chat about some things that are going on in your classroom. Each time that we meet, we're going to be focusing on modern methods. So the two that are sort of generic that you start out pretty much every course with, and I think many of you have a lot of practice in this area, is our shared vision and our shared code, or our classroom code with our students. And how we can take this, again, we not only want to prepare other teachers who may not be as familiar with it, but we also want to push ourselves to see if we can make this process better. And that's why we're getting together this morning to share what worked, what didn't work, what strategies you might have used, what adaptations you might have used with your classroom. So the shared vision, again, is what students and the teacher want to accomplish. It's our goals. It's our shared ideals as a classroom space. And our classroom code is basically how we're going to accomplish a shared vision. It's the expectations that we put forth for not only ourselves, but for each other, because we are a classroom community. So we are going to be focusing on those two modern methods this morning. From each of these modern methods, we've adapted sort of what Modern Teacher has presented us with what a scale would look like for teachers if we're doing some self-reflection. These are by no means at this point going to be used for like evaluation purposes or anything. These are really just tools for self-reflection to see if you're implementing classroom code to the highest caliber that you want to set your sights to. So if we take a look, and you have access to this presentation in an email that I sent about 10, 15 minutes ago. So you can access all of this information as we go further on. And you'll have access to a self-reflection tool in just a little bit that we're just asking you as a checkout today. A couple check boxes, a couple comments, maybe some artifacts just to share with some other people who aren't MLAs that are aspiring to include some of these modern practices in their classroom. So for classroom code, really, if we think about where we're at and where we're starting with this emerging process, the teacher facilitates the creation of a classroom code. And then if you look at shared vision, it's the same thing. The teacher facilitates the creation of a shared vision. So we as teachers are naturally good at direct instruction. It's just we're good at teaching content that we know and we're passionate about. but how do we get students enrolled in that process as well? How do we get them involved in the learning and the delivery of that content? And that's where the classroom code and classroom vision can take a whole new form and a whole new shape when you get kids involved in the process. Now, I'm not a kindergarten teacher. I am not a fourth grade teacher. I was middle school and high school, so kids were a little bit more independent with their thinking. But I think it's something that can be coached along the way. And maybe I'm totally speaking out of turn, but maybe some of you can agree that these processes can be facilitated and our students can take a little bit more ownership in these processes along the way. So those are the rubrics just to sort of self-reflect, and you'll see those later on. And I want to get to a discussion so we can sort of share how classroom codes and classroom visions sort of shape what we're doing within the classroom. But I'm going to pause for just any general questions. I'm trying to utilize your time effectively this morning, and I know that I tend to talk fast when I get excited about things. So does anybody have any general questions that I may not answer directly? Okay, wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and go into a breakout session. You're just going to be randomly set up with some groups here. For those who created a classroom vision or a shared vision with your class, here are some questions that I'd like you to consider and like you to talk about. So these are the prompts to drive the discussion. How did it go? What went well? What did you change or adapt if it didn't go well? And what advice do you have to others? I know just me personally, when I created a shared vision with my computer science classes, I focused on what are the implications for computer science. And then we were able to drive that discussion, and because our focus was all about computer science. Did you direct your focus for your students, or did you let them go off on a whim and create anything they wanted? So that's something that I'm curious about. I'm sure others would be curious about as well. Also, think about the process that you went through. Did you use the 5 whys, or did you take a different approach? There are a ton of different ideas and ton of different answers, and no answer is the one end all be all. It's what works for your classroom. For those who created a classroom code, what was your method for developing the code? How involved were your kids? Or was it that you gave them the classroom code and then maybe you modified it with them? Or maybe they created it from scratch with you. So again, curious about hearing what the impact is at the elementary school level. And what would you change for the next time that you do this with your next set of students? So I'm going to go ahead and break us out into breakout rooms. And you can refer back to the presentation for the breakout room discussion questions. But feel free to take this wherever you want. We're just focusing on this shared vision and shared code at this point. We're just going to go for a 6-minute blast power session, and then we'll reconvene, gather our thoughts together, and we'll close out this morning. So
what I wanted to just remind everybody, and I'm sure you probably referenced this a little bit in your check-in or the CPO. I just want them to know that, like, from an administrative support, like how important this work is for us, like in terms of like taking what the training is and putting it into the classroom to like just be transparent with us in terms of obstacles and willingness to share with us, the administrators, you, Josh, Corb, whomever, like, this worked really well or this did not work well, just so that we can be as authentic as possible. I just want them to know how important this work is for our district. Like they are trailblazers. We know that. And there's certainly going to be things that are going to make it a challenge at times in the classroom, but dang it. Like I just want them to know that they have our support and that the work is so meaningful, that this is not something that we're just jumping through hoops to check boxes in a walkthrough. And I think they know that. I just want to make sure they keep hearing that.
Just going to give it a second for everybody to get back in. What I'm going to ask is that maybe at least one person, maybe a spokesperson from each room could share just a little bit about what they talked about, what went well, what didn't go well, what recommendations were heard, or something new that you heard that you didn't really think about. So anybody want to start things off? Stacy.
So we had discussed which one, if we had done both. Most of us had done both. Some of us were still taking a look at their codes in our group. I had shared for our group, which is something that we all kind of agreed upon in our group, about re-looking at it. So yesterday, for example, I gave a funny moment. One of my students said, I think we need to adjust our code. And I was like, what? And he goes, well, we have hands and feet to, bodies, parts to self. And he said, yeah, I can't do that one. Because that's a struggle for him. And he wanted me to change that, rule for him. So I I was telling the group that I'm going to use that as a team meeting this morning, that might be something for us as primary that we constantly have to revisit and maybe add on or adapt depending on what our needs are.
I love that. And the ability to keep it flexible. And for a student to like recognize that and share that shows the ownership, whether it was a good intention or not. But that's great. That's fantastic. Anybody else want to share? Jody, go ahead.
In our group, Angie and I talked about how we did it virtually when we were off on our heat days and our, all those fun days we had. For me, it seemed to work easier that way because the kids were a little more focused. Like it wasn't ideal, but it actually gave us some time to sit and talk because we had an hour twice that morning. So we were able to sit and talk about our codes and talk about our vision, and they fed off of each other. But Jackie also shared that she did the Mentimeter last year and it worked out really well. So that was like a great idea that I hadn't thought of. And I pay for Padlet, so that would have been another way we could have done it.
Brenda, I'm gonna call you out. Brenda shared that she had sort of started out because I also was curious what it looks like in kindergarten. Maybe Jeremy, you can chime in as well. But I know that what she had shared was that she had shared what they had done last year for a classroom code and a classroom vision, and that's a good sort of baseline to share with students what sort of the expectations are, and then you're not just shooting in the dark. And I think that especially at a kindergarten level. And unless they have an idea of what they're going towards or what they're looking for, it may be a good idea to start off with, hey, this is what our code was last year, and it worked for us. Let's find out what works for us this year and adapt it. Jeremy, do you have anything that you use that may be a little bit different in kindergarten?
We did the vision, and that's where we're the most solid. And I did the five whys. It was much easier last year for me when we were later in the school year developing it. I know that's a great thing for the beginning, but this early on, a lot of the immature answers came out. So there was a lot of coaching and a lot of guiding, and we treat it like a little bit of a callback. So I can say that they can give you the callback, but if you look at the rubric, I'm not sure they truly understand yet what it means. The code I purposefully postponed because I was going to try to relate it to the temology characters to try to keep everything at a nice package with a nice neat bow. But in elementary education, that doesn't always happen. So, we just had a couple hiccups, we'll do like we're going to do this next week kind of thing. So we didn't quite get there. But we'll get there.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting, and I'd love to see if you do end up tying it into temology. I'd love to see that correlation and the connection there, because the kids they know about the temology characters. I know we had that Spirit Week at the beginning of the year. I think, right? I think it would be really cool to see that. Anybody else have anything else to share? I know this one was sort of a general question. We've done this a couple times now, especially if you were part of that first MLA group. I think some of the thoughts that were brought up this morning were very, very clear and ways that we can maybe improve this process. And maybe you heard something that you'd like to include for next time that you do it. But one of the things I did want to share, and Doug hopped onto the call right as you were like heading out to the breakout rooms, and then he had to go back out and direct some more traffic. But he just wanted to share as well that what you're doing here and how we're reflecting together is really driving how the rest of the district is going to receive a lot of the content that you are already doing. You know, a lot of these processes work, and you're putting in the time and the effort. And we just want to thank you for all of that energy that you are putting in, just going above and beyond, because you know how special this is, and how special you know that this can become, and transformative this can become for the district. And we just want to, again, thank you for all of your hard work that you are putting into it. I know Rita's on the call too. Rita, do you have anything to add?
Hi, everybody. I'm driving from the admin building up to the middle school for a meeting. So the other thing that we wanted to share with you, in addition to just, thanking you, is that you be like really about any concerns that you run into. It's just so important that we just really fine tune all of the training and all of the support and the requirements and expectations before we roll it out to the rest of the staff. And you are the most important people in that process, because you're the ones who are living it and, completing everything and making all of this stuff sort of like Eastern's way. And, please don't just wait until every couple weeks when we get you together. If there's something that comes up that could have an impact on how everybody else implements the kinds of things that we're asking them to implement, please specifically reach out to Josh Core, because, he is sort of the driving force now with his new position to kind of hold all of the information in one spot. So I just wanted to encourage you to please, make one of your to ensure that all of the things that we're asking you to do work well, and let us know all of that information, because you'll be involved in actually rolling all of this out to the rest of the staff in the upcoming years. So this is your own personal training that you're going to be going through. Okay? So thanks again for all that you're doing, and have fun.
All right, two things just to close out this morning, and that is a way that we want to share our experience and really build out the courses that we want to, is I mentioned this maybe at the beginning of the year, I know at least to the CLT team, that we are creating these mod courses, Modern on Demand, that are created by Eastern New York teachers and housed by us. So we're creating our own platform that is going to house all of this content, everything that we're discussing now, anything to help people to implement these practices into the classroom, and all of these tips and tricks are going to be housed on the mod platform. So to help generate this content, we want real teachers from our district. We don't want any outside people, because we know what we need for our students. And that is that we have the content that we're looking for, our photos, videos, classroom demonstrations, virtual resources, interviews, recommendations, and anything else that you could possibly think of that has helped you, that you think would help somebody else. So those are the things that we're looking for. And during this first marking period, one of the, I hate to call it an assignment, but one of the expectations that we have is, as a modern learning architect, is that there is a button here on the slideshow that says sign up. There are three main categories that we're going to focus on for this first marking period, which are pretty fairly basic, and that is the shared vision, classroom code, and the SOPs. We'll talk more about the SOPs next time, as I'm going to ask maybe you bring some along that you share or use in your classroom, with some standard operating procedures. But these, if you could sign up for one of these categories at least, and then I'll be in contact with you and see what kind of content you're willing to share. Are you willing to share a quick video of you explaining your classroom code? Or are you willing to share pictures of what your classroom code and classroom vision are, just so people have a baseline, something to reference to? So there is a document here that you have edit rights to, just for, again, marking period 1 focus. So we have plenty of time till October that you just sign up for one of these, maybe within the next week, and then I'll be in contact with you to see how we'll collect that information. If you are willing to go even a step further and be interviewed by myself or Doug and just share your experience about how you prepare for a classroom vision or code or SOP, that's something that I would love to get involved with as well. So if you're willing to take that extra step there, please let me know. but sign up for whatever you feel most comfortable with sharing. If you want to sign up for multiple ones, go for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I just sort of talked about this. Your next modern mission, I felt like I needed the Mission Impossible theme song here, but that would have cost me too much in rights, right? So next time we're going to discuss standard operating procedures. So what are your SOPs that help drive your classroom and keep everything sort of under control? They can be ones that you have posted on the wall, or they can just be expectations that you share with your students of how they solve problems or as they arise. So SOPs are sort of the next focus that we'll talk about in 2 weeks from now, just so you have that in the forethought of your mind. And then as you check out today, we've put together these self-reflection tools, and they're just forms. As of right now, we're planning on building a dashboard that houses all of this information for you. But what I want to point out is that these are self-reflection, totally. And to sort of keep track of what works and what doesn't work in your classroom. These are not going to be evaluative. So we're not like coming in and making sure that you checked all the boxes. These are strictly for self-reflection right now, but we would ask you that you go in and if you click on each one of these images, you'll see the exact same rubric that I had shared before. Let me edit my responses. Right. Okay, it just asks you for your name, date of self-reflection, and you can edit these at any time. So say that you don't feel like your students are at that proficient mark. Like Jeremy said, we're not there yet, and that's fine because it takes time. It does take a process to get to that point. But as you start going throughout the year, if you feel like your students are really owning that code or owning that vision, they can explain why they have it. Then you can go back in and update that. And it's a good way to just keep track. Sorry for my comments of blah, 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 but you can add in comments or maybe some notes that you might want to share for the next time that we get together. And then any evidence. So any of your pictures or videos that you want to upload of your classroom code and vision, this is a great way to keep that information. And like I said, you can go back in and update this at any time. So the two things that we're asking you to do is sign up for one of the 3 categories that I can be in contact with you, and we can work on getting some of this content that is going to go into our Modern On Demand courses for our teaching staff. That's going to be built by us. And then also the checkout for today over the next few days, because I know you're getting ready for class today, is to click on these links and fill out the quick little self-reflection tool of what your classroom looks like, how it's going, and are there any questions? Okay. So that's it for today. Next time we have a meeting in 2 weeks, and I'll be sending out a meeting reminder closer to that date with maybe any feedback that you've shared, any content that you shared as well. Stacy, go ahead.
Quick question on,
Yes.
I was just pulling up the form so I could see and mark what I needed to do and have it up.
Mhm.
The other thing is, where it says evidence, like, are we supposed to just take a picture of our code and vision?
Yeah. So that's probably the easiest way. You could take a picture of it on the wall and then upload it via that button.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you all again for putting in the time this morning, and I just appreciate everything that you are doing for our kids and the driving force that you are for our district.